second panel discussion of the day, allow me to invite to the stage Osama Ahmadjan to moderate the panel titled Emerging Digital Trends Shaping Project Management. Osama is the founder of Innovation and Technology Association, GE Certified Chief Innovation Officer, Innovation 360 Certified Practitioner, and SDN Certified Service Design Trainer. He is PMP certified and has more than 15 years of experience in managing different innovation and IT projects. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Osama Jan.
Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining our session. Let us, today we will have great speakers. So I will introduce them one by one. So let us start. She is the Senior Director of Project Management Department at the Public Investment Fund. She is an expert in the Corporate Portfolio Management Office. She has worked at leading international financial, investment, and intergovernmental institutions with a long record of transforming companies, achieving visions, and implementing strategies. Please join me in welcoming Arish Naqshbandi. Our second speaker, he is the Chief Strategy and Transformation Officer at Saudi Post and Logistics, Dubai. He is a C-level executive director with successful records in transforming organizations and improving technologies. He is an expert in strategic management, operation management, change management, and project management. Please join me to welcome Dr. Ghassan Khalifa. The third guest, he is the Digital Delivery Director at the Red Sea Development Company. He is a civil engineer, project information manager, building and information management specialist, experienced speaker, and a keen seller. He is a passionate of digital construction, and he is committed to drive innovation and digital transformation in the construction industry. Please join me in welcoming Ronan Collins. Our fourth guest, he is the author of the Harvard Business Review Project Management Handbook and 4 other books. And he is the creator of concepts such as Project Economy and Project Manifesto. He is a fellow and former chairman of the Project Management Institute. He is the founder of Projects and Company and the Strategy Implementation Institute. Please join me in welcoming Antonio Nito Rodriguez. Our fifth speaker, he is the CEO of IBM, company based in Kuala Lumpur. He authored and co-authored numerous books, including Serious Gaming, the Service Automation Framework, and recently the Enterprise Big Data Framework. He is a pioneer and advocate for automation and big data, and he is frequent keynote speaker at universities and technology conferences around the world. Please join me in welcome Jan William Federer. Thank you all. Now let us start our discussions. So let me ask you, Arij, what can you tell us about the PMO in PIF?
Thank you, Sama, for the introduction. Hello, esteemed guests. Actually, PMO is a centralized department with a chief of staff division that supports PIF in multiple dimensions by implementing best-in-class project management governance across all the projects that we are managing, whether these projects are to establish portfolio companies or to manage corporate business and IT projects. The department actually managed the project since the inception phase, when these projects are still an idea or demand, till we reach the stage of maturity where we are ready to launch and start operating as a standalone company managed by PIF. Recently, PMO has been extending their support to the newly established portfolio companies to set up their PMOs and also to support them in the implementation of the 100-day plan.
Thank you, Arij. So let us, if I may allow you, Antonio, to ask you this question. How can organizations capitalize on the big data and the artificial intelligence to build their strategies nowadays?
Well, Musama, I think it's a great question. I think 5 years ago we didn't think the big data could be used in projects, in strategy implementation, and what we've seen over the last 5 years is that actually we can use disruptive technologies to better do our job. I've seen some startups in this space, quite a lot of startups in developing solutions for the project management, project implementation. One of them, for example, it's based in France, and they can do, based on big data around WBS, work breakdown structures, they can do any project plan very detailed in 5 minutes using big data instead of 5 weeks. So if we use technology for the more heavy administrative tasks that we still have to do in our profession, I think that will give us much more time to do the work where we can bring more value, which is around stakeholder engagement, employee engagement, value delivery. So I am very hopeful that we'll see massive changes in the next 10 years using big data, AI to deliver strategies, to deliver projects. So let's see if that happens, but it would be great, I think.
Thank you. Dr. Ghassan, from your wide experience about the strategies, can you please elaborate more on how can we utilize the big data and the artificial intelligence in shaping our strategies?
So first, thanks, BMI, for joining us in this conference. I think the unprecedented opportunity here is to really look at things not in the traditional way. We are urgent here. We can imagine what data can do for our customers. So you always start with the customer in mind. You see how does the customer benefit from better products and services. And then you do reverse engineering. You link that back to how can you learn from the data available. That's exactly what's been discussed all day during the conference. That data is a tool to learn and develop. With that in mind, then it doesn't just become an idea about let's create and herd as much as data as possible, but really the opportunity is then to collect it with purpose, which is, I think is the interesting bit. The other interesting bit for us would be in this environment, Saudi Arabia is now developing serious regulation when it comes to data and privacy. We are looking at best practices, but we're also looking at what's best for us in our context. And this is where the opportunity for the leading organizations, leading companies, to come and explore with the government very early on how to use that data without compromising and privacy and security. So I think my message is that the sky's the limit and there's opportunity, the opportunities in this.
Thank you, Doctor. John, as a CEO and founder, can you also give us your insights on how to build the strategies capitalizing on the big data and AI?
Absolutely. And first of all, let me thank you for inviting me to be on this panel today. In order to dive into that a little bit more in detail, we've seen that everywhere, every project, at every moment, there is more and more data generated. And a lot of companies are really struggling on how can I get the value out of that. There's so much data out there that you can potentially spend the rest of your life making sure that you have cool kind of analysis or very interesting insights. But the big question is, how can you translate that into something that is valuable for a company? And how can you get a good return on investment on that? Because building big data solutions, it's expensive. It requires a lot of knowledge, well, very expensive technology. So the step that, in my opinion, most companies and governments need to take is to start with defining a strategy. If you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. So focusing first on how you will use and utilize that data in order to make lives better, or to get a more competitive advantage, or to make your production process more efficient, that's the first step. And I think that as soon as a government or any kind of company starts to formulate that and has a very clear point on the horizon of where do we want to go, then the technology, the processes, and the people who will do that is a secondary part. So that would be my 2 cents on this topic.
Thank you, Jonathan. From your experience, how much time will it take on average to get this knowledge and learning curve to adopt such latest technologies and big data, especially?
It's an interesting question to put me into. First of all, I echo the gratitude. Lorenzo, very happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation. I find it interesting you left the construction sector to the end of the questioning on the data because we are slow to adopt some of these technologies. And I think to answer your question about how long it's going to take, it's not easy to define. So a bit like Jan was saying, you have to have the strategy, you have to have the roadmap, and then you have to figure out how do we train the people, what skills are they going to need. For me, to understand big data, you have to understand the language of data, how it's collected, how it's stored, how it's checked. It has to be good data, and then you can start to look for the value, and then ultimately you get to the question, what is the problem I'm trying to find, or what is the scenario I'm trying to address? Because you have to define the question before you start doing the data analytics. So we have to learn a lot of language and how do we adopt data, how do we get data to work. So there's no answer to your question of how long it's going to take. Some people would get there very quickly. Some people in the construction industry might take a little bit longer, but we're all on the same journey. Some of us are going to get there faster.
Okay, so let us move to the next question. About the future digital trends that might be adopted in our project management practices. So let me ask Antonio, what do you think? What are the future digital trends that might be adopted as a practice in the project management field?
It's a difficult question. Something is more a wish. My wish is that we could embrace a lot of the technologies that we see around artificial intelligence, big data, machine learning, in the whole end-to-end life cycle of projects. I showed that earlier in my presentation. You have the life cycle from ideation to initiation, planning, implementation, and closing and running. And my wish is that we use technology, digital, for all these stages. I think I share a picture where you see how we're moving from paper maps for driving to GPS, and then at the end we have self-driving cars. So my vision, my wish is that we'll create, so with paper maps, we would get often wrong approaches, we will miss the locations, we will turn in circles. With GPS, we're much more efficient, we know where we're going, and then we go to self-driving cars. I think today the profession I was mentioning, we're still in the paper maps when we look at projects. So how do we move into a GPS system where we say this is where we want to go with the strategy or the project, and we get a roadmap automatically with big data, digital, so we can just drive and guide the project towards that. So I think we're not there. You see these small technologies coming up. I'm familiar with one I just invested, is around project selection. I believe when you have enough data, you can use machine learning to tell you which projects have more chances to be successful. So you will reduce drastically the project failures and the trillions lost every year on bad choices. So that's just one step. But in the future, I'd love to see self-driving projects, imagine. And then they will take care of doing the risk management and taking mitigation actions and doing the self-reporting. If there's a threat, they will also make recommendations. And so we again will be focusing on other aspects which I think bring more value. So I think that's an evolution. Like Ronan was saying, some companies will go faster. The ones that like to embrace technology faster, they will go, of course, experiment a lot, but I think this is a timeline of about 10 years. In 10 years, it's about 80% of projects will be disrupted. I hope.
Thank you, Roland, what do you think about the digital trends that might be adopted in the construction field?
So right now it's a very exciting time for technology in construction. We're seeing a huge amount of investment from the investment funds, the kind of entrepreneurial startups, particularly in Europe and the US. There's a lot of new technologies coming. Some of them are going to be hugely successful, some of them not so much. We have to wait and see. For me, it's a bit like the panel discussion earlier when our friend from China State was talking about a collaborative approach to the industry. These technologies are going to have to underpin those strategies. We need technologies that we can base trust around, that people can see they're open, that people can see the data is structured, it's reliable. Those technologies are what are going to come to the fore, because we have to move away from a traditional design, price, construct model, because that's not very productive, it's not very efficient. But we need technology support, a more collaborative, more open, more kind of communication-based strategies. So the technologies that are exciting to me are trust-based communication tools, sharing of data tools, where people can start to believe the pricing, people can start to believe the scheduling, people can start to get confidence about the quality they're going to get. Those are the kind of tools that are going to become very, very interesting. But again, the construction industry has to start doing the basics. So we have to get better at designing to a good level of quality, and then building to a good level of quality. So we've got to get the basics right, but there's some exciting things coming in the technology world.
Thank you. Arij, about the future digital trends that we might adopt as project management practices.
From my perspective, project management is an art by itself, where there is no one size fits all. However, I can see the big data will be having a favorable impact on the future of project management, because it simply depends on data, which is being used either to facilitate decision-making process or to increase the overall productivity across the different firms. On the other hand, we do have the artificial intelligence, the robotic process automation, and the machine learning could have a different kind of impact. And this could happen by analyzing the project data, predicting different trends, simulations, and at the end of the day, we might forecast when the actual outcome could be. It's also worth mentioning that we have Industry 4 in addition to the virtual platforms. Besides that, we also have the remote working that could change the way we are managing our projects in the future, and make it more lean and more efficient at the same time.
Thank you, Alij. Dr. Ghassan.
So everything I've heard is absolutely the technology that's coming up is very impressive and very interesting. The thing I'm keeping my eye on is not necessarily how fast the technology is changing, but more on the side of how we as individuals are behaving towards that technology. So what I'm coming from is that it's been clear now since COVID that the demarcation line between our work life and our personal life is diminishing. So you just think about the last few years, how many meetings you've had at night, how many virtual teams you've been working with remotely, and how well that worked, how shockingly well that worked. So it will be very difficult for us to go back to the way things were. What I'm saying is that the technology right now is good enough for us to really change the way we project manage. Good enough for us to think about, if I can hire people from anywhere on the planet to manage this project with me, and I'm sure I can meet my deadlines, then what's stopping me from doing it today? So the access to the pool is interesting. The willingness of internationals for all kinds of skill sets to work with us in Saudi, that's going to be very interesting. The other bit is that the idea that you're going to be able to work at your own pace, as much as you want or as little as you want, and you might even be able to work with cross-functional teams. So back to the idea of collaboration. Technology today, not in the future, not in years from now, allows you to do that. And that definitely changes how you project manage. That definitely changes the way teams interact and behave towards each other, in addition to everything else that my colleague said about learning and growth.
Thank you, Dr. Ghassan.
You allow me some
Yes,
one
go
more
ahead.
thing. So I believe we have a real reason to leverage and embrace such transformation to ensure that we will be able to achieve our optimal results and ultimate goals. Because if we use the technologies as an enabler, it will be by moving forward more and more helping and supporting as an enabler rather than a barrier or obstacle.
Totally agree. Like, we might shed the light about how to capitalize on the AI and big data and shaping these strategies. So, Jan, how about applying the big data in managing our projects?
I think that's a very good question. I would even go one step further to describe the impact of data on especially the field of project management. I think that in a couple of years from now, we're not just going to be talking anymore around project management, but we're primarily going to talk about project intelligence. And what I mean with that is basically the contraction of project management and artificial intelligence. At this moment in time, we are still using technology to support projects. So we're using technology to make budgets, planning, etc. What I think we will move into is a form where the technology is going to help us for projects. What I mean with that is that the machine learning algorithms can give us the best prediction of where should I build that new infrastructure project. What is the best design in terms of the amount of stories? What is the optimal traffic flow and how many people should it support it? So what that means is that we're going to see a change or a shift from reactive use of data and looking at it from a more descriptive perspective towards more proactive use of data. And that means going to start decisions about what the data is going to tell us is the most optimal design. So I really see this shift more from a project management perspective towards project intelligence.
I like it. Project intelligence. Very nice. Thank you. Ronan, you like big data, applying it in project management. So give us your opinion.
So I'm going to give you an alternative viewpoint. So when we have these conversations about big data and AI. And if you're sitting in the audience, it can be very daunting. And taking account from my colleagues, we've all been using things like Teams and Zoom over the last year or 2 years. The one thing that strikes me about that technology, first and foremost, is quite simple to use. It's very, very powerful. There's a lot of very clever technology going on in the background so that people can all have these videos. You can have 12 videos feeding in. There's a huge amount of technology in the background. But the actual interface is very simple to use. And we have to bear that in mind when we talk about project management, construction management, that when we provide these tools, we need the Jans of the world who are the geniuses and the whiz kids that are doing some very clever stuff in a black box. But ultimately, we need an experience that's, relatively speaking, easy to use. And until we make these tools not completely like idiot-proof, we need a level of intelligence, but there needs to be some level of simplicity. And that's the big challenge we have in front of us, is to take really, really powerful, really sophisticated technology, have that in the back end, or if you will, on the server, but make the experience of the users really interesting, really exciting, really dynamic, and make it really easy to collaborate. So that if you're planning a project, you're not relying on some piece of software to plan out the next 5, 6, 9 months of the program, but you've got 4 or 5 people. Is this the right thing? Is that the right result? Is the computer telling us the right thing? And then, if we move this, we move that, but make it really easy. And I think then it'll become really exciting to see what can happen if the black box is left in the back, and the project managers that have seen projects go wrong, that know why they go wrong, they know where the mistakes are going to come, that the software doesn't know. So those are the important things for me, is the people interface, and making it easy for most people to use.
Interesting point. Dr. Ghassan, would you like to elaborate?
Definitely, you can foresee right now that if you start tracking profiles of performance, you can predict things will start to get delivered on time from a very practical. Multiply that by 1,000, you start to have big projects. Now you can start supporting your teams in terms of deadlines are coming, the data is saying that you're not going to meet your deadline. These are the mitigation of it. So there's a corrective measure, there's a corrective action that you can extract from data, but then you can go into forecasting and planning. That's what you typically do with data next. So either you're fixing a problem that's happening now, or you're planning for, from a capacity point of view, or you're planning in the future in terms of capacity. Those would be the interesting opportunities to see how we utilize data from the project management. And I think in our industry, the real insights that come from data over the long run is when you give it something. Look at it in the micro, but you look at it in months and years. The ability to extract and learn, and that's something we as a country want to do. Because the projects that are being implemented in Saudi are really quite unique, and just capturing it now in, say, an organized way would allow us to start to really publish research, share our experiences, what's happening with the international community, and through a platform like PMI, and create that dialogue and conversation with other countries on either transformation or thinking about it. They learn from experience. So that's the bit that I'm interested in.
Totally agree. How about you, Antonio? About using the big data in managing our projects?
Sorry, I didn't hear very well the question.
From your perspective, how would we utilizing the big data in managing our projects effectively?
I think there was Gartner, I think last year or so, issue a statement saying that about 50 to 60% of the current job of a project manager will be automated, disrupted. So I think big data is definitely one one of the big drivers. What you always heard around big data and projects is that there was not enough data because it's hard to track, it's not consistent. And what I've realized is that over the past few years, there has been some evolution and started to say, okay, now we can have big data in projects. Now we're starting to standardize. We're creating these machines that generate data alone, similar, so that you can start to use big data as well. So I think it's just going to be very promising, but it requires investment. And I think what I'm afraid is that we need to deliver so much projects. There's a challenge of having capacity to deliver all these mega projects that if we don't make the time to research and to develop new technologies, we will not develop as fast as we should these alternative methods that in the end will make us more effective, more efficient, save lots of millions of dollars. So I think it's a question also of leadership. Where are we investing? Can we make space and fundings for R&D and project management? I don't see that discussion happening today. It's more, let's invest today in more projects, bigger projects, but where is the R&D project management? It's not happening. So I think that's where, if we want to raise a bit the attention, is as leaders, make sure you dedicate 5-10% of your budgets to R&D in delivering strategies, delivering projects, building competencies, like Aref and Gashan were talking about, is the learning. Are we getting value out of all this learning, and how can we do better next time? So that's my only concern, and where I would point out the attention of senior leaders is to invest in doing these things better and embracing new technologies, because it's a long-term run, and those who will invest now will for sure benefit in the midterm, long term. So that's where I see the attention that we need to put as leaders.
Thank you. So our last question that I want all the panelists one by one to answer it. It's about the digital transformation. We are in the digital transformation era now. And as all of us know, that digital transformation is not an easy process. It takes too much time and effort and resources. In addition, or in parallel, we have a lot of giga projects that we need to execute at the same time. So what is your advice? How can we manage both digital transformation of organizations and as well as executing those giga projects? So let us start with you, Arid.
So there are two key aspects that help organizations to overcome such challenge. Proactive and well-structured planning, in addition to effective communication. And I truly believe that it's very important that we set a clear expectation from the beginning at early stage among all concerned parties about what are we expecting out of this transformation journey. Ensure that we have a full alignment of what everybody is expecting to see. This is one side. If we want to deep dive more into the key enablers of digital transformation, I would like to use the three famous pillars, which are people, process, and technology. So for people, we need to ensure that we have the right skill set in terms of leadership and agility in particular. And we also need to influence and empower people to innovate the most they can and work differently. Also identifying and engaging with all relevant stakeholders based on their influence type make a big difference. And also their buy-in to the idea or this whole transformation journey. Moving to process, there are multiple aspects that we shall consider, starting from having a clear characterization framework to identifying dependencies, prerequisites, what are the success factors, and what is the operating model that we will be using. Last but not least, we have technology. So we need to use the right technologies to ensure that we can smoothen the overall transformation process to the best we can. At PIF, we are driving the implementation for class technology solutions that is supporting our digital transformation from one side and also strengthen the development of having more robust ecosystems.
Great, thank you. So, Ghassan.
This is a tricky question. Transformation is very messy. It's a word. It sounds okay, but when you're in it, when you're trying to change the state of an organization from one form to another, plans get redone all the time, redone. Plans change as you're progressing. You find out new things, and you have to drop old assumptions. So really going through the motions from one part to another requires a lot of, you have to be very empathetic to what's going on now. Your EQ has to be very good. The idea of changing yourself while you are operating, also you have to be a little, you have to be of two minds. One mind is really trying to maintain the status quo. These are the people delivering and providing services to the market, at least in our case, as if nothing changed. Very different from the mindset of the other people who are trying to completely shut them down and build something new. So when you're asking the same person to do both things at the same time, it's a conflict, isn't it? I'm at conflict. And on one hand, I'm trying to deliver the service. On the other hand, I'm trying to destroy my own job. What really works is that you have a very clear, shared purpose. Why this needs to get done. That has to really be embedded in the organization, whether it's a digital transformation or otherwise. So you start with that, and then what worked for us at Saudi Coast Logistics is that you have teams collaborate with each other, but they are certainly two different teams. One team deals with what we call BAU, business as usual, and another team deals with projects or the things that you do to invest, build the future. And those teams collaborate with each other, work with each other, but they understand that one of them is satisfying the needs of the current customer, and the other teams are building the needs of the estimated needs of the future customer. Somewhere they merge with it. Okay. So that has been my experience very effective in transfer.
Thank you. Another.
So I think the digital transformation of the construction sector is even messier than trying to transform the postal service, in the sense that it's a very fragmented industry. So you have architects and engineering firms all competing for work, all trying to win a piece of the action. You have project management companies, commercial companies, then you have management contractors, and then you have the supply chain. And they've all got a different view of what it is to be digital. At the Red Sea, we've taken a few actions to make it easier, but we're continuously trying to improve that process. So one of the actions we've taken is we've bought and paid for some of the main platforms that people collaborate on. So if you're working on a Red Sea project, it doesn't matter what systems you have in your office, you come to us and you share information on one platform. So everybody's got access to the same platform. So we've tried to solve the communication part, right? But in my experience, you have to look at the digital transformation from different perspectives, through different lenses. So I was working for a main contractor, and our objective was to take paper away from the construction process. So on a normal construction project, you have clipboards, people doing paper markups. We wanted to make that digital. So we went to look for technology, we found the right digital process. And then in order to get the supply chain involved, we had to find a trigger for them. We couldn't go to a subcontractor and saying, you need to transform digitally. It doesn't work. But we said, if you can speed up this process, we can release your payments earlier. So if you start speaking to a supply chain about giving them money earlier, what do I have to do? Right? So you have to look at digital transformation from different perspectives. For us, we got much better data from the construction project. we were able to start building much better reporting dashboards because the data was coming to us not in real time, but in a matter of hours. But the person that was helping collect the data, they weren't being digitally transformed, but they were getting the benefit through earlier payments, earlier adoption, earlier approval. So to me, digital transformation requires a whole bunch of different approaches, some tailored to specific audiences, some tailored to create a level playing field, but there's no one-stop solution. You have to think about how is this person going to react, how is that person going to react. And it goes back to my friend from PIF. It is people, process, and technology, but it's people with a capital P, capital E, capital O, capital P, capital L, capital E. They're the primary. And everything else falls into place. We have to train more people. We have to get more people in these kind of conferences. It's about sharing knowledge, it's about sharing experiences, but it's all about people, not about the data. It's all about the people.
I agree. That's why we are here. Claudio?
The topic of, I love the topic of transformation, digital transformation. Before digital, there was this globalization transformation, and many organizations created a transformation office. I have several clients, big ones. They have a transformation office, which initially was temporary. Most of the companies' organization created a transformation office with the plan of dismantling the transformation office after 3 years when the transformations were completed. This was the globalization, and what companies realized is that after that one, there was another transformation, and then it was the digital transformation. And what I see now is organizations having permanent transformation office and expanding them through the units and the businesses. And the digital one is now the big one, the popular one, but I think it's going to happen the same. This is just a continuous evolution, continuous process. And that's what it's a challenge for employees, for organizations, is how much change can you cope with? And I think we are not prepared yet to deal with a lot of change. People in this audience, yes, we are used to change. We are driving change, we're driving projects, we're driving strategies, but 90% of the population in organizations, they like their status quo, they like their stability, they're afraid of change, they're afraid of projects. So I think that's where the big challenge lies. So how can we engage organization in world of change, digital and projects and ongoing? I call this the world driven by change. And that's a big challenge. And the point of digital transformation is that I agree with the point of Gaston on the need for having a strong purpose. I talk in my books around the importance of purpose in projects and transformation, even more than business cases. Business cases, we've all learned how to do them. They always look really nice. Business cases are made to approve projects, not to try to just select the best one, but the purpose of a project makes you be specific on what you want to achieve with that digital transformation, with that project. A simple example, it was a transformation of an HR system in a company that I worked with, and I asked the project leader, transformation leader, I asked her, why are we changing this HR system? And she told me, because the old one is old, the new one is new. And I said, but why do we need a new HR system? And she said, because the new HR system has functionality which creates communities, a bit like the social media, but for our company, so that employees can exchange. And I asked her, why do we need to have community features in our HR system? And she said, because our people are not engaged, many of them are unhappy, many of them are leaving, and if we create communities within our organization, they will feel more engaged, communication will flow faster, there will be less gaps and transparency. And then I asked her, why do we need that? Why do we need employees engaged? And she said, because we will be a better company, we will be better, more effective, more productive, a better company, will hire better people. And I asked her, how are you going to measure that? And she said, we have a yearly survey that we do with all our employees in January. And what's your goal? Is we need to double employee engagement, so satisfaction, by 50%. So I told her, listen, that's the purpose of your project. I know you told me you're doing an HR digital project, but you're not doing a digital project. What you're doing is a project to increase the engagement of our employees by double in January. So that's what I think the beauty of the purpose is. It helps you to be concrete on what you want to achieve with your project. And I completely agree the importance of having that. So a lot of stories connected to where we're going. I think transformation is just permanent. Digital is permanent, and the challenge is being more specific on what we want to achieve. What's the strategy? What's the goal? How do we measure? And how do we engage the whole organization to be proud of it?
Thank you so much. And John?
Good. In this panel, we have been talking a lot around the way in which big data, machine learning, and AI are going to change the world of project management. But if you look at that from a very fundamental point of view, that's ultimately only technology. If you want to move to digital transformation, there's one other component really necessary, and that's the people aspect. And Ronan also already mentioned it. I think that is the crucial aspect when it comes towards digital transformation. How do you get people along on that journey? And that typically starts with knowledge and skills. And what has been my experience is that is frequently the thing that is lacking the most. First of all, it is because people are typically very much afraid around the underlying technology. And that's because they don't know how it exactly works. It's not really that difficult. It's just that we fail to explain how it works. As soon as people start to see things like algorithms and computer screens, they're very quickly going to freak out saying, oh, this is for the IT guys, or this is for the technology people. I'm a project manager, let somebody else do that. But that's, I would say, a very short-sighted view, because if you want to understand how data is going to change your projects, you should be involved in that, and you should at least, at a basic level, start to understand how this works. What is the technology that empowers that? How do data sources get collected anywhere? What is a machine learning algorithm? How does AI work? And I'm not saying that everyone should be an expert, because there's plenty of people who need to specialize in different areas. But what organizations, in my opinion, need to do in order to take steps forward is make sure that at least everyone has a basic understanding of how this is changing their lives. And this is something that I typically like to call data literacy in organizations. We should at least have a fundamental understanding of what data is, how does it work. If you're making a phone call or you're saving a picture, where does that data actually go? Because as soon as you take the mysticism and the scariness out of it, then people start to see that it's just another tool, just like we're using plenty of other tools within project management. So starting from the knowledge and skills perspective, I think is really one of the crucial ways in which you can get digital transformation actionable. And one of the things that I think is still overlooked or should get more attention in the moment.
Thank you so much. So all of us agreed that people are the ones. So let us say thank you to our panelists, and also thank you to our attendees. MashaAllah, they are staying with us up to this time. So thank you so much to all of you. And thanks all of you for enriching our session today. Thank you.